that we're recording in. And so it's not always really essential to do that as it maybe once was. And it only becomes an issue if you get in a steals your music. And the chances of that are very rare. But I think the most important thing on this note is that the copyright is given to you and it's when you affix it. A song in your head is not affixed. A song written down is. So that's kind of the difference. And this copyright actually scatters money everywhere. So it's great. We have the copyright. You've affixed it. The first split that happens is it gets split into two kinds. Music has two essential copyrights in it. It has one for the composition and one for the master. So the composition is governed by the publishing business, which you may be familiar with. Anybody here signed a publishing deal? You have a publishing deal. Okay, very good. And the recording side is often governed. It's called the master. The right there is called master ownership, and the master is usually governed by recording deals. And how many people have had recording deals here? Anybody got a record deal? Used to? Okay. Yeah, for better or there. Now, you get these deals because you get buy-in into the ownership of your copyright of A, the composition, or B, the master. And those people are there to be partners and try and help you exploit that by investing in theory. Exploit, that's right, I've used it already. I'm going to probably say it again, so sorry about that. And so payments are now made. So that's the first split. So we've got recording and we've got the publishing. And from here, we're going to go a little deeper now to the next level. So if anybody has any questions as I go through this, you want to put pause or just want a clarification, or I say something incorrect and you want to correct me, let's get you a mic, all right? So, okay, I have two questions. All right. Go left, right here.
Just going back to the copyright thing, is it registering your song on SOCAN? Is that the same?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, SOCAN is just simply a way of making sure that you get the performance royalties as the writer of the song. They collect performance royalties internationally. It's not actually copywritten. Somebody else could have recorded that song and affixed it, and even if you register to SOCAN, you're not protected. And what was your question?
Is it possible to file multiple songs under one copyright?
Each song would represent its own copyright.
So you can't fix a body of like a project of music into one.
Sure.
Yeah,
you could do that.
We have an EP coming out. I was looking online. I wasn't able to find out how to do that.
Yeah, so you could do that, definitely. If you record, actually every recording you have of those individual songs would represent an affixed status.
Okay.
If you bind it to one CD, let's say, or a USB stick, and you mail it back to yourself all together, okay, you're fine.
So but when it comes down to like filing the
right, I have never done, but I think you have to do it individually.
Individually each song?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, because I was in school for it. I noticed there was in the States they give you that option, but it's not in Canada, right?
You might be able to do them simultaneously,
okay.
If that's your question, but each of them represents their own copyright.
Okay.
But you will own them all. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah. I was just mainly asking about the filing part.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a very, very strong legal step to take if you want to do that.
Okay.
And it's not very expensive.
Got it.
It's just a little bit of time. Great. So that's the tipping point. And that's where we start off into more complications. So the internet is our friend in a lot of ways. It made distribution of our music very easy. It made it so that us here together could record a song and with one of these computers throw it up internationally within half an hour. It's extraordinary the reach that we can have with it. But as it has extraordinary reach, it has made things very, very layered regarding copyright, because the internet doesn't nurture copyright because it is built on intangibles a lot of times. It's easy to control a CD. If I was coming here to sell Elise a CD, I could actually make my entire transaction could happen right here. I play the show. Elise comes up afterwards, gives me $15 for the CD. I receive the $15. I've therefore received almost the bulk of my sales royalty right there in my hand. With the internet, you have a lot of intermediaries that you need to have in place to try and secure that kind of sales royalty. And it comes at you in multiple different ways. Oh yeah, and the internet likes to eat royalties. It's just like hobby is to just take something that you've built, nurtured, and find and give it to a black market in some way, or just by its very nature bury the money and make it very hard to get. And part of this presentation will get into how to fix that, because the royalties go to this place. Okay, what is that?
Black box.
What is it? Okay, she said it's a black box.
The black box.
Yeah. This is the musician's enemy. That's what it looks like. It exists on the internet. I don't know if you can see it. If the internet is looking at it, it's going to be a weird kind of infinity mirror thing. This is a term. So the term for unclaimed royalties or unattributed royalties that are generated by broadcast, by spins on the internet, and in various formats that go unclaimed or unattributed, that age out over time and disappear, never making their way to the rightful owners. So I have money in that thing right now. Probably anybody here who's released something has money in that. Yeah, and you can't see it, you can't find it, but it's in there. With the advent of streaming, we've added another layer to this, and it's actually sped up the process of us feeding this thing. And hopefully this presentation will help mitigate the amount of stuff we have going into the black box, because I myself have it happening right now. If anybody opens up my band and spins some of my music, we'll put money right in there. Probably any of your back catalog. So in the digital era, to track our music, we have to use this code, the Irs C Code. The Irs C Code is one of the most important items you can have as a musician now. It's equal to gear insurance or liability insurance. This is the insurance on your copyright. This means that the Irs C Code is simply how many people here know what an Irs C Code is? Got a couple people? And they're a very simple code. They're something, an alphanumeric code, 4 letters in the front and a couple numbers at the back, and they're free to get. You fix them to your song, and that little code will make sure that when your music gets played on the radio, and if it's registered correctly, if it gets played in Australia, that money flows from Australia all the way back here into Winnipeg, into your bank account eventually. And for me, maintaining the master list of these Irs C codes is one of the key things that you need to have. It's essentially like knowing where the lyrics to your songs. If you forget those, it's going to be pretty hard to play them. If you lose your Irs C codes, it's going to be pretty hard for you to make money off your recordings. So these things get generated at any time you try and upload your music. If you use a digital distributor like TuneCore or CD Baby, they'll give you those codes, and I believe they store them for you. But you can also generate them by going to Connect. All right, so Connect is one of the first societies to kind of make note of, and I have a list of all the societies and organizations, collection of societies that I'm going to talk about for you guys to take a look at. So they're for free. You can try ideally affix them at mastering, and they get buried in your metadata, so which is the code, essentially the digital information that you input into the back end of your music files, which will allow you to receive the money from that Australian radio hit that our band is going to have after we do our recording later. Okay. So the IRC is the first trigger to help us locate all the money that we've left scattered across the globe because of the internet. So as I went off the top there, we went into 2 categories of the copyright. We have the composition and we have the master. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the master side, and it's going to come up in a bunch of different ways as we go through this, so bear with me. So we're probably pretty familiar with the master revenue. It's the most kind of common royalty that you guys are receiving. If anybody's put their music up on CD Baby or TuneCore or through DistroKid or done some offstage sales, you're receiving the master revenue generally. It gets split with record labels if you have a record deal, and it's a good term to remember because the master is ownership comes up in a bunch of different ways. So you'll often hear in terms of record deals like who the master owner is, or who has the master rights, and that is just regarding the ownership of the copyright of the recording. So it can be generated from your sales, but it can also be generated from synchronization placements as well. And where is that? The royalties from master sales get paid through CD Baby Tune Core, your digital distributor, or that occur from sales from streaming. They can also occur from placements in movies, which is called synchronization. There's two sides to synchronization, and it's a license fee. It's not a typical royalty. It can generate some royalties in the back end, but it's a flat fee that's usually negotiated. So that can also be counted as master. In a synchronization deals, you get usually equal share goes to the composer and each owner, and then equal share goes to the owner of the master rights. Okay, so they make money as sales through streaming, whatever downloads. Master owners also make money from synchronization placements. They'll also make money from neighboring rights royalties. And I will have a more detailed breakdown of how this works because it's quite interesting, and it's often money that people don't know about that ends up going into the black box. On the pub side, there's several key royalties that get earned. So we have royalties that are called performance royalties that occur that every time a work is performed, whether it's on the radio, whether it's live, or whether it's streamed, there's actually a performance royalty that gets collected, and that's collected internationally by SOCAN. So we're really lucky on this one front. We have a very strong system protecting those and tracking those royalties called performance royalties. So they when a song is played live, your royalty. Sorry, there was just some clattering in the background. There's actually a royalty that gets earned by the songwriters. How many people here are set up with SOCAN? Everybody. Okay, most of the room. Okay. So SOCAN is the Society of something Canadian Authors and something. I can't remember how the acronym goes. I just know it as SOCAN for so long. I've forgotten what the acronym actually stands for. And they represent songwriters and publishers. Okay, so when you play a work live, there's actually a royalty that gets earned for the songwriters whose works were performed that night. So how many people here are playing their own works at their own shows? Okay. So whenever you do that, you actually earn a royalty for yourself that gets collected from the venue, which is licensed by SOCAN. And if you submit a notice of live performance on SOCAN's website, you can receive the royalty back. If you don't, it sits there at SOCAN and remains uncollected and can potentially end up in the black box and age out. Now, SOCAN's a little more vigilant, but they have a big problem. They have tons of unclaimed royalties from this same situation. There's a service which makes this a lot easier to procure. It's called Mazooka, Mazooka, which I didn't write down on any of my sheets. And that actually streamlines claiming these streamlines submitting your notice of live performance to claim these royalties. So it's a tremendous amount of money, by the way. If you play larger it's this royalty stream, or avenue maybe, represents 3% of the entire 3% of the gross ticket sales from all ticket sales on every show in Canada above $5 or $6. So every show at True North, every show here. So if you play a large show, you'll actually see quite a nice payday from your notice of live performance through SOCAN. So you play your own show, you play your own songs, and you'll actually be entitled to receiving the songwriter's royalty that night. There's a bunch of different permutations, so I won't dig into much further into that one because of time. SOCAN also collects the performance royalty that occurs in streaming. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's something like 5% of royalties go to as a performance royalty in streaming. So every time you stream your music or somebody streams your music, you're entitled to receive that, but you have to be the songs have to be registered with SOCAN to get that. Okay. There's also performance royalties earned whenever your music is used on the radio, and that is usually a well-known royalty that people have heard about because it has a long history. It's been around for a long time. The right of the composer when the songs are broadcast has been protected for quite a long time. And it's something like $35 or something like that for a national broadcast in Canada for a spin, and can go up depending on markets, I believe, market share of the radio station. I'm not an expert on all the breakdown of that, but it is quite powerful. So when you look at your SOCAN statements, if you've registered your stuff, you're going to see that you're going to be filling it out claiming two sides. The publishing royalty on the performance side gets broken up into two categories, the writer's share and the publisher's share. So the writer's share is something that you always own. You can never sell it. You, as the person who wrote the song, are protected from exploitation. This division between a publisher share and a writer's share was put in place in an attempt to protect writers from having their works kind of essentially taken from them in perpetuity, which had been happening in the 70s, 80s, and earlier iterations of the music business. So when you register your works with SOCAN, you claim to be 100%. So you're the writer and you're the publisher. Until you sell your works, you're the owner of your own publishing. You control the right to it, okay? Just like you control the right to your master recording until the time that you sell it. Self-releasing artists are master owners of their own material. Just making sure I covered all my notes here. All right. So another publishing royalty that exists, so we're just keeping us on track here. We talked a little bit about the master side, and now we're sort of following the trail of all the sort of little rivers that are flowing out from the copyright down the publishing side. So the other side of publishing is mechanical royalties. Mechanical royalties are a very they're also a very old mechanical, and they were apparently created around the time of the player piano to protect songwriters and performers, or songwriters, from player piano reproductions. So literally the mechanical, the term means the mechanical reproduction of your song. And these are earned every time a song was reproduced. So a song, it occurs when a song is downloaded, a song is sold in physical format, and it also occurs in streaming. And one of the big issues we're seeing right now is that people aren't aware of the mechanical and don't have them properly registered. Because unlike with the performance royalty of publishing, which has SOCAN has international reciprocal deals, and we'll go get that money across the globe for you. We don't have reciprocal deals from through our Canadian Mechanical Reproductive Rights Association, which is CMRRA, and it's been a bit unknown. And so what's happening right now is every time a song is streamed, let's say, well, we've put our music up, we've got it online. All of a sudden, people are starting to spin it across the globe. Every time they spin it, this 5%-ish is being earned as a mechanical that's going into the black box. And until you register unless you register with the mechanical societies in each territory that you're getting spun in, you're going to be unable to secure that money, and it's going to fill the black box. It's going to be the same with your downloads too, with your download mechanicals. So one of the recipes that I've kind of put forward these days is for people to be, because it's an insane amount of administration to go out and register in every territory. We kind of need to think pretty broadly, just like we're thinking broadly with our release strategies. We're launching our stuff internationally through these distribution services. We need to kind of manage our compositional copyright in the same way. So signing up with a publishing administrator is something I'm recommending these days, because it's the only kind of reasonable way to make sure that you get this money and then it doesn't end up filling the black box and aging out and never coming to you. And this is something that's going to be going on as long as streaming is a major platform, and as long as we're launching our stuff internationally. So this is something, even though like a lot of songwriters will be probably hesitant to be cutting in a publisher, because publishers, publishing administrators take 15 to 10% of your gross publishing. Typical other major publishers will take 25%-ish of everything that you're due as a publisher. So, but my theory is, or my opinion is that it's well worth that. Something like, 7-ish% that they end up really taking as a publishing administrator, for you to get all of your international mechanicals for the rest of your life, because you own that composition and you want to make sure that you receive what you do and you don't leave it on the table. So that's what I recommend. Locally, we can register with the CMRRA individually, and you can get signed up to get your Canadian stuff. You can go to Harry Fox, which is the U.S. Mechanical Association, to get the U.S. ones. But from there, it gets more and more tricky because it's just more and more different societies doing, and you're going to have to do quite a lot of legwork. So from this, I think is my kind of recent opinion on this is that you can't self-publish. It's just too hard. It's just too much of a labyrinth out there, and you need strong publishers. The other reason is because we're all the new tech, like Facebook, which we're on right now, they like to launch before they have licenses. They're about launch. We'll clean up the mess of copyright later. And what's getting caught in the middle is us as individual songwriters. These really strong publishing administrators are on the front line of deals with these organizations. So you might have heard, like everybody, there was this big panic about getting signed up with Facebook to procure your royalties. Well, if you're with a strong publishing administrator, that you would be already part of deals to make sure and making sure that you got your compensation. You wouldn't even have to think about it. They also have the capacity to digitally fingerprint your audio files and track the spins across YouTube, because it's a big creator of black box royalties, and strong publishing administrators actually have the tech to fingerprint the file and track it audio in every kind of cover version if you had a big hit, to make sure that you are compensated and that you get the money you're owed. All right. By the way, the physical, mechanical, yeah, you have a question? I could repeat it.
I blanked out. Sorry. No, it's okay.
We get set up. The mechanical statutory rate for physical in Canada is 9 cents a song, and in America it fluctuates between 70 like 0.75 cents a song. So that's quite a lot of cash. So if you've had a lot of physical download sales, you probably have money out there, and you should register for your mechanicals. Hey, what's the question?
Those regional admin agencies that you talked about, can you give an example of a few of those names?
Like a publishing administrator?
Like the bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, so publishing.
Themselves.
Yeah, well, Song Trust is one that I've looked quite a lot into, and I have a code for a discount for signing up with them. But CD Baby uses Song Trust. They're one example. There's many examples of publishing administrators. You could just Google them. I have a bit of a breakdown. TuneCore does the service as well. They're one of the cheaper ones, but they have some kind of encumbrance regarding their synchronization rights. Publishers also get paid through synchronization. The other side, it's called a sync fee, the other side of music and TV placement, but that's a flat fee, and I won't really dig into that. I just want to make sure I did say that. So I'm going to skip off mechanicals. Was that enough information there for you? Yep. Elise?
Simple question. So if somebody just downloads an whole album on Spotify, is that considered a downloadable still? So that's
There's a mechanical generated, yeah. And now Spotify is in a beef with everybody about those issues. And I believe it's still unresolved. I'm not too sure. I haven't got the latest information on that, but they had taken the case that they weren't owing anybody mechanicals because of the way their format was. Yet at the people. Yeah, so there's a mechanical but there's a mechanical generated when the spins happen, for sure, right? So until the spins happen, I'm not too sure if it's downloaded and unplayed. If it generates one, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So for now, it's safe to say like, artists are in a good spot.
Well, it's not bad.
Okay.
You have to have to make sure your stuff is very organized, right?
Got
Like,
it.
it's tough for sure because the rates are low, and if you're not getting spun, there's no money. And the lower, you have to have millions of spins for it to make revenue. And songwriters particularly are in a hard spot because their rate is the value of the rate, the mechanical has been eroded in the tech world a bit, because they don't see it as the same. There's an intangible quality to it, which I believe buoys their argument to saying that it's not a download. There's no mechanical. There's nothing physical. There's nothing being reproduced. Yet everybody, any country that has value in copyright is protecting that mechanical. So everybody else thinks it does exist.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we talked about master revenue, royalties. We talked about publishing royalties, and now we'll talk about the other side. How is there 3 sides when I said there was only 2? I lied, or did I? Neighboring rights are a royalty that were created, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s. They started becoming broadly applied, and they stem from the fact that up until the creation of neighboring royalties, when a song was played on the radio, only the composers or the songwriters on that track earned a royalty. So I was at a panel the other day, and somebody gave the example of Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin, for all of her millions of hits, radio spins, for all of her career on, let's say, one of her most famous songs, which she wasn't the writer on, would have had no royalties at all. She wouldn't have made any money from the radio spins, even though it was one of the top, she's had hit after hit. Only on songs that she was the composer on would she have had hits. And the neighboring rights are a royalty that gets paid to the performers and the owners of recordings. And there's an international treaty on this, which most countries that value copyright signed on for, except for America. So America have a very weird version of neighboring rights. It's almost, we could say they don't have neighboring rights. So still in America, when an artist gets played on terrestrial radio, they don't earn, the performer or the owners don't earn any royalties. But here in Canada, we have very strong collection societies, and I'll break those down in a second. And these are one of the key royalties now that have sort of filled the gap in my mind in the decline of gross revenues for the individual artists. These didn't exist prior to the 2000s, so they rise up as the CD and typical sales formats have declined, and the revenue that can be generated from this, from the broadcast of your music, which pays neighboring rights royalties, can be tremendous. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so I have an overview here, which is too small to read because it's got too much information in it. It's actually been updated. Well, it's not too bad on this one. So in Canada, there's a plethora of rights organizations collecting this neighboring right, because there's one for the owner and one for the performer. And the performer category has 2 separate categories. There's one for featured performer and non-featured performer. So the owner side's pretty clear. Here in Canada, I recommend you register with Connect. If you're a self-releasing artist and your music is being played on the radio, you have money owed to you, and you can sign up for Connect with Connect. I have them on the sheet and information on breaking down all the territories that they cover. They're really our only option. We can go to Resound as well, but I don't recommend that. And they'll collect for the master side. So every time your song is played, and especially you have to note, they have reciprocal deals internationally, and they also cover audio visual. So if your song's getting played on television, you can earn a royalty. a neighboring right royalty. And I have the percentages broken down, and they have about 17 or so international countries that they'll collect from. And they can collect from America as well as Canada. We also have royalty associations covering the performer side here. So we have 3 of them, which I only focus on 2 because these people answer my emails, and the third one never did. And the third one is Artisti, and it simply collects for the Francophone side. And Emerauc and Actra are the principal ones. So every time a song is played on the radio now, the performers on that track get a royalty. And they're also entitled to private copying levies, which these societies all collect. So there's kind of like a little package of royalties that every musician is entitled to, which you can procure by signing up with these societies. Again, signing up is for free, and they take a percentage of your royalty, between as small as like 0% on some things to 4.4% to 15%, depending on the territory. And to sign up, all you need to do is have your song information. Your Irs C Code is always usually good, as well as the list of performers. If you have any questions about either these organizations, I can put you in touch with them and just give you an introduction to get you going. There's actually a couple web searchable databases that you guys can look into if you want to see if you have neighboring rights. One of them is called Royalty Claim. Okay, so royaltyclaim.com. It's free to sign up there, and you can search to see if you yourself, such as mechanicals. You can see how the issues in America with the Spotify not paying mechanicals, because usually if you've released something and it's on Spotify, you'll be on this list of people with mechanicals owing. You can also look at Sound Exchange, which is a U.S. neighboring right organization, which I'll go over in a second. They have, this is more detail on the owner side. SoundExchange.com has a searchable platform as well. So collect for the master side, and they do this internationally. So any self-releasing artist, you're the owner of that master right. You own the royalties for that. You can sign up with Connect, and they'll collect that for you internationally. For performers, you have to sign up as individuals. Ideally, everybody who played on the recording signs up. Makes it a lot easier. One of the big pieces with neighboring rights royalties in all registrations, but particularly neighboring rights, is you don't want to have conflicts. Conflicts are when somebody misfiles your music, or you misfile your music, and you have information there, and somebody else has filed it saying, "No, I'm the feature performer," and then you're listing them as a session musician, or you have 2 competing societies collecting for the world. So it's important to keep them very clean, and the best way to make sure that's happening is once you get signed up, ask the people at the society or the collection society to verify that you don't have conflicts, because conflicts push your money into the black box. And I myself had discovered that I had conflicts, and on my registrations, because I had one organization collecting for the world, and it turns out the other thought they were collecting for the world, and I was like, "Oh, sorry guys, no, it's not that doesn't work." It turns out I had blockage in the kind of pipeline towards my bank account with these royalties, so I had to sort that out. So I want to just reinforce here how this one works. So it can happen from multiple sources because of how varied the interpretation of neighboring rights is. So in Canada, we have neighboring rights get occurred from broadcasts of your music, from webcasts, and you'll also receive private copying levies from these neighboring rights societies. In America, they don't have the same tariff as we do. So in America, you get it from satellite radio and also from webcasting. And it can be very powerful. So a very big revenue generator, and I'll get into that in a second. So in Canada, the owners need to sign up, the lead performers, and then also the non-featured. There's actually a royalty that gets generated for just session musicians and anybody who participated in recording. So if it's a producer making a beat, if it's an MC taking a verse, those are all eligible people to be on receiving neighboring rights. Yeah. One more question?
If you register for neighboring rights, there's one income coming from each stream or whatever, let's say. You're dividing up the pie the more people register. Or am I misunderstanding? Like that?
Well, there's one side that always goes to the owners.
Right.
So that portion of the
Right.
pie always flows that way. And then, yeah, if you're a solo artist and you're the only featured performer on your record, like you've done everything, you played all the instruments.
You get the full
featured.
Right.
But if you're a band, it gets split equally. And then if there's non-featured, the non-featured share doesn't actually cut into the featured share. It's it's like 5% or something. I've read that it's 5%, but somebody at Actor X told me it was 20. So maybe if they're watching, they can tell me what that is. Does that make sense?
So yeah, if you are registering as a non-featured performer, you're not necessarily splitting the pie for a featured performer. You're actually just taking money from the void.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, in theory, you'll be receiving money that's owed due to you. Yeah, if there's no non-featured performers on the recording, I don't believe that there is a payment that's due to the non-featured. I don't quite understand that nuance, but if you give me your email, I'll try and answer it. It's a good question. So as I mentioned, I bring in this much like with the mechanical situation where there's multiple organizations or there's 50 different organizations across the world that govern neighboring rights, and it's pretty hard to register yourself directly. It's kind of the same with neighboring rights. That's why you want to look at these societies and judge them kind of based on how much their percentages are and then how many territories they cover. But I recommend that everybody consider registering directly with Sound Exchange. As Canadians, we typically end up getting broadcast by stations that have radio shows that get broadcast on stations that get covered or retransmitted across America. And then when that happens, you actually get royalties paid to you under American law and American tariffs. And those get collected by Sound Exchange. So when you're putting your little recipe together of your neighboring rights registrations, I recommend you register with Connect for the world and MROC or ACTRA as the performer and for your non-featured, and then register directly with Sound Exchange. And to make things super messy, Sound Exchange doesn't collect for non-featured, so you have to do a little bit of a shimmy there. There's a couple little administrative moves to make sure that gets cleaned up, and if you do have a question about that, I can clear it up for you. And this is one of the top paying organizations in the American music business now. They're one of the biggest single payers to the American music business, and I believe it's true of Canada as well. So the last piece that I was going to talk about was just the value of your YouTube channel and how much revenue can be generated from there, because it's one of the other places that the internet has created. It's created a place where you can self-manage your own digital content channel, and you are entitled to earn the advertising revenue that gets earned by Google. And until you tell Google you want a share of that, they take it. So that's another place that we see a lot of money disappearing. Because they put ads on everything, and you're entitled to some of that. SOCAN does collect some small YouTube royalties for you, but you need to register really with a publishing administrator to get all of your YouTube royalties for broadcast. But the advertising stuff, you have to sign up with them directly for Google AdSense and monetize your channel. Now, that can be a bit of a moral decision, because some people, like my old band, would never want ads running before our music, because that was just not our style. But it's one of those things that I think is important to consider when you're sort of putting the package together of making sure that you are earning all of the potential revenue from your material. So this is coming to the end here. It's kind of a pretty crazy 40-minute sweep of all of these royalties. So we have the master ownership is the recording itself. The publishing is the composition. Master ownership pays royalties through sales, through streaming, also through neighboring rights, and from placement in movies. Publishing, we do earns royalties through the performance royalty collected through SOCAN, or through mechanicals collected here in Canada by CMRA or a publishing administrator, and also earns money for the composers when the song is used on television or broadcast on radio. Then record labels are your kind of ally in essentially monetizing your copyright of your master recording, ideally, and invest to make money. And the music publishers are there to help manage your the rights of your music publishing catalog and hopefully increase its value either through administration or through actually like actively shopping it to songwriters to make big hits. And then neighboring rights, which govern the rights of the performer and owners whenever your music is broadcast in essentially any format. So these are the societies. I have really detailed breakdowns of the neighboring rights topic, and I also have the list and website information and kind of little notes on all of the societies that I just went over. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Stephen. Just a reminder that we have the surveys at the back to fill out, and we will be having more workshops like this starting again in September. So thank you all for coming, and thanks again, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you. And if you guys have any questions, my cards are here, and I also we'll have an email list sign-up sheet, and you can sign up for our Manitoba Film Music's e-newsletter and come into us for some recording money to help trigger the generation of all these royalties.